In the weeks following the South African Grand Prix, FISA had made good on its threats and announced that all drivers who'd taken part in the Kyalami strike would be fined $10,000 each and have their super licences suspended. FOCA appealed over FISA's heads to the FIA itself, and with the prospect of none of the sport's big names being in attendance, plus a case of galloping inflation, the sponsors of the Argentine Grand Prix got cold feet and cancelled their race. However, the appeal was successful. The FIA halved the fine, still a fair amount to some drivers, and reduced the bans to one race suspended. They also criticised FISA's handling of the whole affair and overruled them in the matter of the super licences. With the Argentine race cancelled, it would be nearly 2 months until the teams reconvened for the Brazilian Grand Prix, and there was plenty of time to develop cars, finalise sponsor deals, and try to work out what to do about the projected Renault dominance. Meanwhile, in the wider world, Freddie Laker's pioneering low-cost airline fell victim to the worldwide recession, leaving 6,000 passengers stranded, while Ireland, north and south, was particularly badly hit. John DeLorean's car factory in Belfast went into receivership as demand for his product was only half what was needed to break even, while over the border the Irish centre-left coalition government collapsed and a general election saw a new Christian Conservative government under Charles Hockey elected. Finally, there were some troubling signs in the South Atlantic. A new military leader of Argentina, General Galtieri, was making belligerent noises, and Argentine scrap metal workers on the island of South Georgia raised an Argentine flag over their plant. Most of the F1 teams were far too busy to notice any of this, and by the time everyone reconvened in Rio de Janeiro, there was plenty of new hardware on show. Lotus 91s for Elio and Nigel, Alfa Romeo 182s for Andrea and Bruno, an Ensign N182 for Roberto Guerrero, whose contractual issues had been sorted out, and a Theodore TY02 for Derek Daly. Apparently going backwards, on the other hand, was Brabham, who arrived with a pair of last year's BT49s upgraded to D-spec with Ford Cosworth engines, having decided that the BMW-powered BT50 needed a bit more work, and amid rumours that the team and engine supplier had already fallen out. Bernie Eccleston said the Bavarian firm's engines would be back in the San Marino Grand Prix in 2 races' time. No change of hardware from March, but a new look. Jochen Massa's good officers had brought in a title sponsorship from Rothmans, which meant the team could keep him on for the season and might actually have some money going forward. Many of the drivers were also wearing neck braces, the bumpy anti-clockwise Jacarepagua circuit being extremely painful and fatiguing in the current generation of ground-effect cars with their rock-hard suspension and extreme cornering speeds. Some even had oxygen piped into their helmets to ensure they didn't pass out in the fast corners. Another innovation on most of the normally aspirated cars raised a few eyebrows. In the non-turbo team's quest for an edge, someone had come up with a great wheeze. Cars were weighed after a race to ensure they were above the minimum weight limit of 580 kilograms, emptied of fuel but with all their lubricants, coolants and so on board. In order not to penalise a driver for nursing home a car with a leaky radiator, teams were allowed to replenish the fluids before weighing. So, several teams arrived with water-cooled brakes fed by plastic water bottles in the bodywork. The water would be liberally sprayed over the brakes in the first few laps, and when it was exhausted, the cars would be a couple of kilos underweight for the rest of the race, and the water could be refilled before weighing in. It was within the letter of the rules, sure, but very obviously a trick, and you could bet there would be protests if it worked. With a full entry of 31 cars, there was one more than permitted under the new rules, so rather than hold a full pre-qualifying session, FISA opted to take the 3 worst-performing teams of 1981, March, Ozella and Tolman, and have a quick run-off, eliminating the slowest. Riccardo Paletti was slowest by some margin, some 14 seconds off the eventual pole time and 8 seconds off the back of the grid, and would take no further part. Once again, it was turbos at the front, even though the circuit was less of a power blast than Kyalami. Alain Prost took pole this time, over 6 seconds faster than last year's pole time, with Gilles Villeneuve alongside in the increasingly impressive-looking Ferrari. Third was a non-turbo car, that of Keke Rosberg, alongside René Arnoux, who had gone off twice in pursuit of a good time. Lauda and Reutemann were next, with Piquet back in 7th after not having had a clear lap, and Pironi a similarly lowly 8th, perhaps feeling the after-effects of a massive smash he'd had in testing at Paul Ricard. Patrese was 9th in the other Brabham, and Andrea de Cesaris was a good 10th in the new Alfa. At the back, the 2 Ligiers could only manage 24th and 26th, and mention of the water bottle trick to Lafitte only drew a hollow laugh. Running water bottles? We can't even get down to the weight limit, let alone need a way of ballasting up to it. It was business as usual for the Porky Tolmans, both of whom failed to qualify, along with Brian Henton joining his old team and Roberto Guerrero in missing out on the race, which meant that Mauro Baldi would get his debut and in a very respectable 19th. Race day was hot, over 30 degrees, which would exacerbate all the problems with driver exhaustion, but all the cars lined up without trouble and the race got underway, with Villeneuve getting a good start to go into the lead, and Arnoux making up for his disappointing qualifying to take second, with Rosberg nipping at his rear tyres and Prost down to fourth after the first corner. Rosberg was through into second soon after and began harrying Villeneuve for the lead. He got a bit out of shape in going round the outside though and was swamped by the two Renaults. Meanwhile, Patrese had got ahead of Piquet and was up to 5th, with Pironi 6th, until he went off the track, rejoining down in 13th. Patrese was soon past Rosberg as well to go 4th, and the Finn then lost another position to Piquet. The Brabhams were going great guns, and when Prost made a slight error in the infield section, both of them piled past into 3rd and 4th places, and managed to hold on down the main straight before bearing down on 2nd-placed Arnoux. Patrese had a couple of goes but couldn't make anything stick, so Piquet came past to have a look himself. On lap 10, De Cesaris came in for new Michelins, but it wasn't the tyres as it turned out, and he was back in to retire a few laps later, having bumped over a curb and knocked his under-tray askew. The new Alfa's debut ended a couple of laps later, with Giacomelli pulling off on lap 17 with a burnt-out clutch. Raoul Boesel blotted his copybook in his first home Grand Prix, ending up in the barriers as the first retirement of the day, followed by Derek Daly in the new Theodore. With Villeneuve pulling away from Arnoux, a cracking battle was developing behind the lead Renault, with Rosberg now having got past Prost and charging up to dispose of Patrese. Before he could have a shot at Piquet, the Brazilian finally got past Arnoux, to the delight of the home fans, and Rosberg followed him through. So now it was Villeneuve leading Piquet, Rosberg, Arnoux, Patrese and Lauda, who had overtaken Prost as the race approached 1/3 distance. Piquet had closed right up on Villeneuve as the leaders started to approach the first backmarkers, with Rosberg still tight behind too, with the three leaders covered by a scant second. On lap 24, Rosberg got past, only to lose the place again a couple of seconds later. Meanwhile, further back, and off-camera, Reutemann had made a right mess of trying to get past Lauda and clouted the McLaren's rear right suspension, then did almost exactly the same to Arnoux and took them both out, while Lauda trailed into the pits to retire. Not Carlos's finest hour. All of which left John Watson 6th, while Rosberg had finally managed to get past Piquet properly on lap 27 and was soon pressuring Villeneuve hard. The race was approaching half distance and still there was only just over a second covering the top three runners. Soon enough, Piquet was back in front and challenging for the lead. Villeneuve ran wide defending his line, put his left-hand wheels on the grass and speared across the front, narrowly missing the Brabham on his way into the catch fencing. The roar of the crowd as local hero Piquet took the lead almost drowned out the cars, and the Brabham quickly pulled away from Rosberg now that he was no longer being held up by Villeneuve's Ferrari. Behind the leaders, Patrese had a spin in 3rd and lost places to Prost and Watson, managing just to stay ahead of Mansell, while Salazar had made his way up to 7th in the ATS. Patrese was suffering physically and came into the pits on lap 35 to retire, completely exhausted, and had to be carried from the car into the pits to recuperate. It was just coming up to 2/3 distance, and the cars had begun to spread out, with gaps expanding and shrinking as all the drivers started to feel the effects at different levels. Salazar's good run came to an end as his engine gave up, while Chico Serra's suspension gave way, leaving Piquet the only Brazilian left in the race. The last third of the race was pretty processional as Rosberg kept the pressure on, but Piquet fought through the fatigue, head resting on the sides of his cockpit as he went through corners, to take his first home win. Rosberg took his first career podium in 2nd place, and Prost was 3rd. Watson, Mansell and Alboreto picked up the minor points places. When Piquet came out onto the rostrum for the prize-giving, it was obvious just how much he had been suffering. First he leaned on Keke and Allen's shoulders, before his legs gave way entirely and he collapsed, needing to be revived on the spot before the ceremony could proceed. There would probably be a protest over the whole water-cooled brakes thing, but with just a week before the next race in Long Beach, it was unlikely that anything would be decided before then, given that the system was technically within the rules, and the cars had passed scrutineering on the day.